You weren't born knowing why it hurts. The ache arrived before the words did. Small, like a stone in a shoe. Then larger, a wether that settled under your ribs. You learned the tricks. Stay busy, keep smiling. Say, I'm fine. You learned the mask, and the mask learned you. Some days it works. The face you show the world does its job, and no one asks what trembles behind it. Then, in an elevator or a quiet kitchen, a seam gives way. Heat rises, memory flickers. You feel the weight again, the one you've bargained with 100 times. People told you pain means you're failing, that if you were strong, you wouldn't feel this much. But that's not how living works. To be open to love and meaning is to be open to loss. To want anything at all is to risk being torn by it. Schopenhauer called this the law beneath the day, endless wanting that can't keep its promises. Nietzsche answered with a dare: love your fate anyway. Jung pointed to the doorway you keep stepping around. The wound you refuse to face becomes the life you cannot escape. Camus whispered the last part: revolt, not against pain, but against the shrinking it demands. You've tried avoidance, it charges interest. You've tried numbing, it numbs the good too. You've tried pretending, the mask melts in heat you cannot control. So tonight, we do something different. We stop asking for a world without weather. We step into the rain and learn the sky. We look at the break, not to worship it, but to stitch it with gold and call it ours. This is not a sermon on suffering. It is a lesson in custody. How to take your life back from the places that hurt. We will go to the root of the ache. Listen to what it's been trying to tell you, and practice the only courage that changes anything: staying. Keep your torch. We're going in. Chapter 1. The Mask of Survival. When pain first enters a life, it rarely arrives with explanation. It comes through rejection, through loss, through the strange silence of being unseen. And almost immediately, we begin to improvise a way to survive. Some of these improvisations are simple. A child who learns to smile when he feels like crying, because smiling keeps the adults calm. A teenager who jokes loudly so no one notices the shaking in his hands. An adult who answers busy when asked how they're doing, because busy sounds safer than lonely. The mask is not evil. It is a clever invention. It allows us to move through hostile environments without constant collapse. It keeps us working, studying, raising children, even while storms rage inside. If we are honest, the mask has saved us more than once. But here is the paradox. What protects you in the beginning imprisons you in the long run. The mask doesn't stay on just in dangerous places. It fuses with your skin. Soon, you forget what your own face looks like beneath it. The world praises the mask, rewards it, promotes it. People say, "You're so strong, you're so composed," and inside, something withers. Carl Jung warned that the persona, the social mask, is necessary, but it becomes toxic when we mistake it for our essence. The price of wearing it too long is disconnection, from others, from truth, from ourselves. Pain, then, doesn't just stay hidden. It multiplies. It grows in the shadows where it cannot breathe. Think of molten wax poured over a flame. The wax hardens and hides the light, but the fire still burns underneath, hotter and more desperate. Sooner or later, the heat cracks the mask. That is when breakdowns happen, or sudden eruptions of anger, or the numb exhaustion that feels like life has become colorless. Yet the mask is also the clue. It points directly to where you have been wounded most. Behind every carefully maintained smile is a story of why it had to exist. Behind every "I'm fine" is the memory of when it was unsafe to say otherwise. To begin to love your pain, you must first recognize the disguises it wears and admit that you've been carrying them for far too long. That is the first step, to see the mask not as a failure, but as evidence of your creativity and resilience. You built it. It worked. And now, slowly, you must learn to remove it. Not all at once, not in public, but gently, as one removes bandages from a wound that still needs air. Chapter 2. The Language of Pain. Pain does not always scream. More often, it whispers, a heaviness in the chest, an inability to sleep when the world is silent, a strange ache in the body that doctors cannot find a cause for. We are trained to ignore these whispers. Society tells us to push through, to medicate, to drown them in noise. But pain is intelligent. It has its own language. Carl Jung believed that the psyche does not suffer without reason. Every symptom is a message. Every ache is a fragment of ourselves asking to be heard. When you feel anxiety rise in your stomach before a conversation, perhaps it is not weakness, but memory. A memory of when speaking your truth once brought punishment. When depression drags you down like wet clothes. Perhaps it is not laziness, but a deep protest. A part of you refusing to continue walking a path that no longer fits your soul. And when anger surges too quickly, shocking even you. Perhaps it is not just temper, but an ancient defense, built long ago when someone first crossed your boundaries. What if we began to treat pain as a teacher instead of an enemy? What if, instead of silencing it, we listened? A fever is not the illness. It is the body's alarm, calling attention to what is wrong. Pain in the psyche functions the same way. It is the soul's fever. This is why people who bury pain deepest often feel the most lost. The messages pile up, unanswered, until they overwhelm the system. The body collapses. The spirit grows numb. Life feels like gray repetition. But if you dare to listen, to sit with the discomfort without immediately running from it, you may discover something extraordinary. That your pain is not trying to destroy you. It is trying to guide you back to yourself. Learning this language is slow, yes. It requires patience. But the first time you realize that your anxiety or sadness carries meaning, a door opens. You are no longer a helpless victim of your emotions. You are a translator, deciphering the code of your own existence. And in that moment, pain becomes less terrifying. Because it is no longer a monster in the dark. It is a voice, asking to be heard. Chapter 3. The Mask We Wear. We live in a world of masks. Not the ones made of fabric or porcelain, but the invisible masks we learn to wear from childhood. A smile when we are breaking inside. A calm face when anger boils underneath. A laugh that covers despair. Jung called this mask the persona, the part of us that interacts with society, the performance we give so that we are accepted, loved, and safe. The mask is not evil, it protects us. Without it, we could not survive among others. But problems arise when we forget it is only a mask, when we believe it is who we truly are. Think about how often you've answered, "I'm fine," when every fiber of your being screamed, "I am not fine." This is not lying in the ordinary sense. It is survival. Because most of us learned very young that our pain was unwelcome. Crying made others uncomfortable. Anger brought punishment. Fear made us appear weak. So we became skilled actors. We learned to melt down in private and put on the smiling mask in public. But what happens when you wear a mask for too long? The face beneath it begins to atrophy. You forget its shape. You forget what it feels like to simply be. This is why so many people wake up one day and whisper, "I don't know who I am anymore." Because the mask has fused with the skin, and the pain behind it has been denied so long, it erupts in symptoms. Panic attacks, chronic fatigue, emptiness that no achievement or relationship can fill. The mask works for society, but it does not work for the soul. And Jung's warning is clear. What you repress will not vanish. It waits. It gathers strength until it bursts out in ways you cannot control. But there is another path. What if you could learn to gently remove the mask? Not all at once, not recklessly, but in moments of truth. Telling a friend, "Actually, I'm not okay." Allowing yourself to cry without apology. Letting your anger speak, not in destruction, but in honesty. The mask will always exist. We need it. But it must be a tool, not a prison. You are not the smiling face painted over pain. You are the one beneath it. The one who aches, who bleeds, who longs, and who, paradoxically, is most alive when most vulnerable. To love your pain is also to love the part of you the mask tries to hide. And that is where healing begins. Chapter 4. When Pain Speaks. Most of us imagine pain as an intruder, something foreign that breaks into our lives and steals our peace. We treat it as an enemy. We fight, medicate, distract, suppress, anything to push it away. But pain is not an intruder. It is a messenger. Carl Jung wrote, "Neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering," meaning when we refuse to face the wound directly, the wound invents new ways of being heard. It becomes insomnia. It becomes obsession. It becomes the gnawing restlessness that follows you from room to room. We call these things problems, but they are often just the echo of what we would not allow ourselves to feel. Pause here and think. How much of your suffering is not from the wound itself, but from the exhausting labor of keeping the wound hidden, the refusal? Imagine a child who is not allowed to cry. She learns to swallow her tears until her throat burns. Years later, she is praised for being composed, but inside, the unshed tears have not dissolved. They live in her chest as a constant weight. Or the man who was taught that fear is shameful. He hides it behind jokes, behind work, behind alcohol. On the surface, he looks fearless, but alone at night, the fear leaks out as racing thoughts, and he cannot sleep. Jung's warning is merciless in its honesty. What you refuse to suffer, you will suffer in disguise, the turning. But here is the strange paradox. When you stop running, when you sit down and allow the pain to speak, it begins to change. At first it rages. Like a neglected child finally given permission to cry, it floods you with everything you had buried. It is overwhelming, yes. But then, slowly, something softer emerges. The pain begins to tell you why it came. It shows you the boundaries that were crossed, the dreams you betrayed, the griefs you never named. In this way, pain becomes a map, a guide toward the parts of you that are still alive, still tender, still worth protecting, the image. Think of a cracked vase repaired with gold, the Japanese art of kintsugi. The break does not vanish. It becomes the most beautiful part of the object. The fracture glows. Jung believed the psyche works the same way. Your wounds are not meant to be erased, but integrated, stitched with attention, with honesty, with love. And this is where affirmation begins. Not in denial, not in pretending the wound was never there, but in saying, yes, it broke me, and yes, I am still here. Yes, it hurt me, and yes, I am still whole. To face your pain is to discover that it is not bottomless. It has edges. It has a voice. And once you learn to listen, the voice becomes less terrifying. Because you realize it was never here to destroy you. It was always here to bring you home. Chapter 5. Learning to love your pain. To love your pain does not mean to celebrate suffering. It does not mean to seek it or glorify it, or pretend that cruelty and injustice are somehow beautiful. No. Loving your pain means something quieter, something harder, something far more courageous. It means no longer exiling the parts of you that hurt. It means letting them belong. The first step. When Schopenhauer looked at the world, he saw only endless striving, and from this striving, endless disappointment. He believed life was a wheel that spun on the axis of suffering, and in many ways, he was right. Desire never ceases. Every joy dissolves. Every achievement fades. Every body decays. But Nietzsche refused to let the wheel have the last word. He said, Amor Fati, love your fate. Not because fate is gentle, but because to love it is to reclaim power over it. To stand before the storm and say, you will not make me less alive. And Jung added yet another layer, that within the wound lies the seed of your wholeness. That integration, not escape, is the path to becoming yourself. So here, at the crossroads of all these voices, we are invited to make a choice. The choice. You could keep fighting pain, keep running, numbing, hiding, but you already know where that road leads. To exhaustion, to emptiness, to the mask fusing to your skin. Or you could turn toward it, sit in the company of your grief, let your anxiety tell its story. Touch the scar you've spent years pretending not to see. At first it feels like surrender, but slowly you realize it is not surrender at all. It is reclamation. Because the moment you stop pushing pain away, it stops controlling you. You begin to carry it differently. Not as a curse, but as a compass. Not as a weight, but as a witness. The transformation. Loving your pain does not remove it, but it changes its meaning. A scar is not proof of weakness. It is proof of healing. A wound is not evidence that you are broken. It is evidence that you are alive. When you allow the wound to belong, when you stitch it with golden thread instead of shame, you discover something astonishing. That pain deepens your humanity. It makes you softer to others, more honest with yourself, more open to the fragile miracle of being here at all. This is what Camus meant by revolt. Not a tantrum against the absurdity of life, but a refusal to bow to despair. A decision to keep walking, to keep creating, to keep loving, even while it hurts. The path forward. So here's the task, and it is both simple and impossible. Love your pain. Not by worshiping it, but by no longer exiling it. Listen to what it says. Hold it without apology. Let it guide you toward what matters most. When you can do that, the suffering does not vanish, but it stops being the enemy. It becomes part of the tapestry, threaded with gold, glowing in the cracks, reminding you that even in breaking, you are still whole. And maybe, just maybe, you will begin to see what Nietzsche saw, what Jung understood, what Camus dared to whisper. That life is not less valuable because it hurts. It is more valuable because it hurts. And still, you love it. Closing the circle. Life hurts. That is not a flaw in you. It is not proof that you are broken or that you somehow missed the secret manual everyone else received. It is simply the condition of being alive. To breathe is to ache. To love is to risk loss. To hope is to risk disappointment. Schopenhauer taught us honesty, that suffering lies at the root of all striving. Nietzsche challenged us to affirm anyway, to love our fate even when it bruises us. Jung reminded us that the wound is not an enemy, but a guide, a portal to wholeness if only we will enter. And Camus showed us the quiet heroism of revolt, to keep living, to keep creating, even when life makes no promises. So what is left for us? Not perfection, not escape, but a practice. The practice of facing what hurts instead of hiding it. The practice of stitching our cracks with gold. The practice of saying yes, not because life is easy, but because it is ours. Tonight, remember this. You are not weak because you ache. You are not broken because you grieve. Your pain is not a prison. It is a passage. Love it. Not in theory, not in some distant future when it has finally left you. Love it now as it is, because it is the proof that you are alive and still here to walk forward. And maybe, just maybe, that is enough.